Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
But what gives human life its worth anyway? Because someone loves it, hates it. The flesh is weak, Johnny. Only the soul is immortal. And yours belongs to me.
And welcome to another episode of The Pint, a pop culture podcast. Hey, do you know what today is? It's Wednesday. That's anything can happen day. And what's going to happen today is we're finally going to get around to talking about Insider Request for Eric Notkin, the one and only 1987's Angel Heart. My name is Lloyd.
And I'm John.
And we are going to have fun with this one.
Yeah, I've never seen this. Had you ever seen this?
I have seen it. It is an old favorite of mine. You've never seen it before this, huh? Wow.
No, I when I was like 11 or 12 when this came out, I was aware of it simply because the controversy of Lisa Bonet, and her having been the daughter in the Cosby Show, and then she had this like intense sex scene, which we'll obviously talk about. Yeah.
So obviously, I had only seen it one time in full, and I did remember, obviously, the hot, steamy sex scene. And I also remembered one of the two twists in the end, but for some reason I didn't remember the other twist. That was one thing came as a surprise to me.
I was going to say, for you, that's not a shock. You could have watched it last week and not remembered that Mickey Rourke was fucking in it.
You're right, but I do remember Mickey Rourke. I'm a 1980s Mickey Rourke sucker. I like 80s Rourke.
Yeah. We'll get into it. It's a fucking shame. Good looking guy, and all the physical transformations he's done to himself it's too bad. It's too bad there's something in his head telling him that he's not good enough, because that's what it's got to be. But we'll talk further.
Yeah, I did a little. I'm sure you did some research.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
All right. So let's get into Angel Heart.
Start the diesel. All head forward.
Released on March 6th in 1987. For those of you who may not know, if you're just tuning in, you didn't watch it, you should watch it. But basically, the bumper sticker is New York City private detective hired by a mysterious client to find a man who has vanished but still owes a debt. So his investigation takes him down to New Orleans and leads him to a bunch of brutal murders. Directed by Alan Parker, award-winning British filmmaker. This guy's won 19 BAFTA awards, 10 Golden Globes, and 6 Academy Awards.
Wow.
That's pretty serious. He's known for like a wide range of filmmaking, works in many different genres. He's done musicals. He's done Fame, Pink Floyd, The Wall, The Commitments, one of my favorites. You ever see that?
No, that's a movie it's like on my list of like, I should have seen this. And I know music lovers such as yourself love that movie.
Yeah, it's fun. I like it a lot. Evita, if you remember that. He's done true story dramas like Midnight Express, Mississippi Burning, Angela's Ashes. He's done dramas, horrors, thrillers. He even did a favorite of mine. I don't know, you've probably never seen this, but it's a Peter Gabriel soundtrack called Birdie with Matthew Modine.
I've heard of it before, but yeah, I'm not all up in the Gabriel like you.
Nah, I'm up in his shit. Screenplay also by Alan Parker. So this was based on the 1978 novel Falling Angel, which I did not read. I think after seeing this again, I'd like to maybe check that out, but I know I never will.
Yeah, it's nice to have fake goals.
Yeah, it is. It is, especially when they come to reading.
Yeah,
I'm surrounded by so many books I've never read, and I never will.
I have so much stuff. I say to people, I'm going to get to it, and my tombstone will be erect and me under it by the time I ever do.
Yeah. So yeah, the 1978 novel "Falling Angel" by William Hurtzberg. I almost made you choke there.
Mr.
Hurtzberg. I'm only going to call him H at this point. So following his release of this novel, he developed his own screenplay that no major studio was willing to produce. I'm assuming it's pretty convoluted. He probably stuck to the script a lot.
Well, did you read like one of the studio notes as to why so many studios passed on even the Alan Parker version?
I did, but I didn't write anything down.
They kept saying, well, can't it have a happy ending?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, and this movie certainly does not have a happy ending.
Yeah, right. So the producer in 1985 brought it to Parker, the director and screenplay, and he worked on a new script, made a lot of changes, such as the book is entirely set in New York City, but it does have the allusions to voodoo and the occult. So Parker brought it down to New Orleans, which totally makes sense. He also he took the setting from 59 to 55 because he wanted it to be like distant from the 60s, because we're maybe getting more woke in the 60s,
Right.
So that was pretty cool. He changed the characters around a bit too. Parker, he wanted them more sympathetic and a little more intelligent. And Louis Cytheri, how many different ways does he call him in this movie?
Harry Angel, Mickey Rourke calls him Cyphieri, and Cypher.
Cypher and Cyphers.
It's never the same.
Never the same.
He cannot get this guy's fucking name.
So, that character was made to be more down to earth, more realistic than a huge, larger than life personality, which totally makes sense based on who he is. But I love De Niro's demeanor in this when he played this character. Not just the slicked back hair and the perfectly coiffed beard and the long, shiny fingernails. Just the way he spoke, the way he had this sort of superiority the whole time, but never in a cringy way.
No,
you know what I mean? Yeah, like almost like he was always being humored by it.
Yeah, I like when you get to him at the end, when you get the final scene, and his hair and throughout the whole movie has kind of been in like one of those, I think like samurai like pullback, but different layers. But then at the end, he's like full fucking heavy metal god. It's like just over his shoulders, and he's just like, "This is who I am, bitch." Yeah.
So that was cool. And then I won't get into it yet, but the way the murders and stuff happened and all that was changed from the book. This was produced by independent film studio This was produced by independent film studio Carolco Pictures. Yeah, we've done some. Can you remember what we've done of Carolco?
Oof. Did they do? Well, I mean, I know Carolco, I think, did the Terminator, right?
They did T2.
T2. We didn't do that. We didn't do the Terminator. I don't know. Running Man. I don't know. What did they do?
They did do Total Recall, but we didn't talk with Total Recall, have we?
We did. I think you were off that week. I think it was me, Larry, and Laura.
The first Rambo movies, I know we threw one of them in there for Andrew Morgan a long time ago.
First Blood, we did, yes.
Yeah. And Universal Soldier.
Oh, right, during January, yeah.
Yeah. Also, we didn't do this, but one of my favorites, The Changeling.
We will be doing that.
We will do it eventually.
Yes.
Yep. So getting into what we alluded to before, the sex scene. So this thing, similar to another film we did recently, had to cut some about 10 seconds out, I think, to
right. I got to ask a question. So, I sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask this. So you're saying they had to cut 10 seconds out to not get an X rating.
Yeah.
I read that when the movie was released on home video, like in probably 87 or 88, they reinstated it. I watched this last night on Pluto, which, by the way, it's an hour and 53-minute long movie. Pluto made it 9 hours long with commercials. But anyways, I cannot imagine that the version I saw could have been cut at all. Because this is like some of the most, like, look, I've always heard that it was obviously controversial because Bill Cosby initially told her it was okay to do and it wouldn't ruin his image. And then like he apparently got mad afterwards, and that was kind of the thing. But my fucking Lord, he just about fucks her to death. We'll get to the results later, but like, I can't imagine 10 seconds of fucking being cut out of that.
I know.
They're wrestle fucking. That's the only way to put it. They are 100% MMA fucking in this.
Have you ever had a girl or a guy scream like she screamed at the end? I think we all deserve that. We all deserve a scream like that at some point.
Yeah. Like he is banging her so hard that I was waiting for there to be a scene where he pulls out and then breaks his dick on her thigh because he's just madly pumping away on her.
It's like one of those, ever see those wristbands that you snap and it wraps around? Yeah. Like that with his dick. And
I wanted to bring this up since we're on the sex scene. We did an episode, I don't remember when, and I don't remember who was on it, but in the episode, there was a sex scene in the movie, and we were discussing how one of the male character is sucking the female actress's breasts. And we were talking about it, and somebody on the show was like, they don't do that, right? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've seen movies where they've done this. If you've never seen Angel Heart, Mickey Rourke full on is sucking on her titties and nipples. There's no stunt titty. There's no stunt Mickey Rourke.
No.
He is eating her breasts for dinner in this movie. So if you ever say, I don't think that an actor has ever done that before, then watch Angel Heart and you're going to see hardcore fucking and you're going to see titty sucking till next weekend.
That's right. And as a matter of fact, I was trying to watch this twice, as I do. And I didn't get to watch the whole second viewing, but amazingly, I saw it all the way to the sex scene.
Yeah, well, you know.
And I did like pay attention to that because I'm like, the first time around, I was like, holy cow. And the only thing you don't see is his tongue.
No, but he's
so you see his mouth and you see the nip, and there's coverage, but there is no tongue.
There is mouth on nipple action. That to me that translates to what I was talking about in that episode.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, and she was 18 when she filmed it.
Yeah, well, not just that. She was 18 when she filmed it, and in the movie, he's supposed to be, I think I figured it out, like 33 or 34, and she says she's 17 in the movie.
Yeah.
She's everything I need. Daddy says she's too young, but she's old enough for me.
Yeah,
So I was a little uncomfortable, but that's the whole thing.
Some crazy stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So that's that. Filming locations. So I did a little deep dive into this because I like going to New York City. And so this thing was filmed in New York City and New Orleans from March 31st to June 20th, 1986. The script called for 78 filming locations.
Wow.
It seems like a lot to me. I've never filmed a movie. That seems like a lot. Production designer Brian Morris did everything they could to recreate the 1950s aesthetics. So as far as the eye could see, in all of the outside shots, they dressed and clad all the storefronts and made them to be, authentic to the period.
It looked great.
A lot of fucking work.
Yeah,
it did. So I'm going to name, like you did in the Titanic episode, which is great. If you guys haven't seen that, go listen to that. In New York City, Eldridge Street, that was Harry's neighborhood. That runs parallel to the Bowery Street on the Lower East Side. Lanza's restaurant, that's where he met with Louis Cypher, and he ate the egg.
Oh, that was maybe the most menacing hard-boiled egg eating scene I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that's the most menacing egg I've ever seen, ever. That was near the East Village. I've never been there, but I know where it is. Alphabet City, that's like Avenue A, B, C. Bar scenes and the Connie in bed. Remember the first girl he was with, Connie?
Yeah, that was another unusual sex scene. He gets her he gets her totally undressed and then just loses all. He takes everything off of her, and she's beautiful and she looks great. And then like he just sits up in bed and smokes a cigarette.
Yeah, and that's it. It's over.
Yeah,
and he says like, "What else do I got? You got a heart on," and then it ends.
Yeah, it was weird.
They went to Harlem, where the procession and the church scenes and the hospice scenes were. Coney Island, where Izzy and his wife Bo, where she was standing in the ocean. Not the original actress, by the way.
Oh,
played the wife in the ocean? Yeah, there was somebody else, but she got hurt filming. So.
Oh, okay.
Coney Island, south of Brooklyn, Long Island, and then across from that, Staten Island. Those were the Dr. Fowler scenes.
I thought you were going to say those were the Wu-Tang Clan scenes.
Nice. And then in New Orleans, a lot of stuff in the French Quarter, Jackson Square, where Angel runs from Margaret's home, and then the voodoo ceremony was filmed there. Royal Street, the sex scene is some abandoned building somewhere.
It looked abandoned in this.
Yeah, right. 4 hours long.
The sex scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it seemed like it, yeah.
Yeah, 4 hours to shoot that. Holy moly. And then the final confrontation. And then the church, that was another pretty cool scene. St. Alphonsus Church on Constant Street. So, yeah, a lot of places, a lot of cool places.
Yeah, 78, you said, and you named off at least 10 of them. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think I did. And I don't know if you want to get into the soundtrack or anything, but a lot of cool stuff by Trevor Jones. Did you notice a lot of the sounds, like the soundscape of this movie?
It's a lot of saxophone, and I noticed at the end when I watched the credits, because this movie, if you've never seen it, like you have to kind of watch through the credits to kind of you get what's happening, but like it shows like kind of scenes through the credits. But yeah, it said, I didn't write it down, but it said it was some famous French saxophonist played all the saxophone stuff that like the kind of tone,
Courtney Pine.
Yeah, all the tone music you hear throughout the movie. Yeah.
Yep. And then he one other thing is, he basically chose a theme. So the song is by Glenn Gray, 1937, "Girl of My Dreams." So that was the Johnny favorite motif. And then that was sort of just incorporated into other elements of the score.
Okay, that's the song she sings, right?
Yeah.
At the end, yeah, okay.
Yep. So that's it for filming and production. What do you got for the cast on this thing?
Bring me everyone. What do you mean everyone?
Everyone!
All right, so Mickey Rourke plays Harry Angel, a two-bit private eye in Brooklyn, New York. You know Mickey Rourke from Iron Man 2, and you probably know him as well for fucking the shit out of Kim Basinger in 9.5 Weeks. That's one of his famous films. As mentioned before, Robert De Niro plays, now pay attention to this name while I say it, Louis Cypher. They're not hiding it, that's for sure. You know him obviously from Taxi Driver and Heat. Lisa Bonet, 18 years old, playing a 17-year-old, plays the awesomely named Epiphany Proudfoot. You know her from The Cosby Show and A Different World, and also apparently she was on the Showtime show Ray Donovan for quite a bit. Charlotte Rampling plays Margaret Krusemark. She was an orca, a film we will be doing here pretty soon, by the way. And also in the 2021 Dune remake, or Dune Part 1.
Oh, she was in that. Oh,
I think she was one of the Bene Gesserits. I only saw that once. I did enjoy it. An actor named Stocker Fontaine. Here's where we get a little New Orleans on you. Played Ethan Krusemark, so who was Margaret's father. Mostly not a movie guy. He played in 470 different stage productions in local New Orleans theater. He was the executive director of Les Petits Theatres des Vieux Call from 1961 to 1985. So he was kind of a very famous local New Orleans fixture.
I'm sure.
This is a smaller role, but an actor that we probably know, playing Detective Demos. It's Pruitt Taylor Vince. If you don't know who Pruitt Taylor Vince is, he was in Constantine. He was also in The Devil's Candy, a horror movie I saw very recently. He is a heavyset guy, but in this movie, he's younger and he's thinner. And he is known for being the guy with the eyes that move all the time.
He's got the lazy eyes, right?
They're not lazy. He has some kind of... they're like beyond lazy. They're constantly moving. His
what
eyes.
movie did we see him in that we did? Was it?
We did something
Frailty?
with him.
Was it Frailty?
I don't think we definitely talked about him. And even though his role in this is like super small, I used him because he's recognizable. Like when we did Cruising and we were like, oh shit, that's Ed O'Neill. But
Yeah.
he looked like 10 years younger. This is Pruitt Taylor Vince, but he literally, his partner is the giant fat guy who
He's giant, yeah.
kind of is now. And in this, he's just like a tall, goofy looking kid. And then besides that, I got one more. Dan Florek plays Herman Weinsap, who is Louis Cypher, his lawyer. Dan Florek was in the Flintstones film from 1994, but he is most likely known from Law and Order SVU, where he plays the captain in 332 episodes.
Oh, that's who he is. I was never really a constant watcher of that, but I totally recognize this.
Yeah, me neither, but I recognize him as well. I've seen episodes here and there. But yeah, so that kind of rounds out our cast there. So Manster, first thing I want to ask you is the very first scene in this movie, I had to go back and kind of like dig through my head. The very first scene in this movie appears to be a scene on the streets of New York, I'm assuming. We get a stray cat, we get a dog, they're kind of looking at each other, yelling at each other, and it ends with just like the camera discovery of like what looks like a very, I don't know, dilapidated female body. Okay? Do you remember what I'm talking about? It's the first scene.
Yeah, I know.
So here's the question.
Is that's when you hear the whispering, right? You also hear whispering.
I think so, but like, but what, like we never got to that. What was that? The movie ended and I went, that first scene, nothing ever came of it.
You're right. You're totally right.
Yeah. They never say this is whose body it was. They never say, oh, at the end, this is what happened. It just seemed like a very out of place scene. I know there's got to be a reason for it, and I'm sure we both missed it, but they did not do a good job of tying that in.
The murders didn't happen until the investigation started.
The investigation starts and all the important murders happen. So who was that woman?
I don't know.
All right. So
that was weird.
So we start off in Brooklyn, New York in 1955, and we meet up with we meet up with Harry Angel, who is a 2-bit private eye, kind of guy that probably chases ambulances and stuff like that. But he gets a call to meet up with Louis Cypher from a lawyer named Herman Weinsap, because Louis Cypher needs Harry Angel's particular set of skills. Harry Angel does a great job of also just trying to talk his way out of a job. He's like, I'm not,
he sure does.
I don't look for people. I'm the guy that like goes and spies on things and does stuff. No, Louis Cypher needs him. Now, Manser, we kind of talked about it before, but what's Louis Cypher all about? What's his demeanor? What's going on with his fingernails?
Well, like we said, he is a black hair, slicked back, man bun on the back of his head. He looks like a young version of like Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Man, his nails, I don't know, look like pearl nails. I don't know, ivory, to a nice and long and a nice rounded point. And he's got the cane and he's constantly fondling the cane.
And they don't hide it. He's got a ring with what on it? Like you see it.
Oh, what is on the ring?
A pentagram.
Remember. Oh, it's a pentagram. That's right.
Yeah.
And he clearly is a man in the know, and he wants Harry for whatever reason. We don't know yet. And like you said here, he's like, hey, my name starts with an A. I'm just the first guy people run across. I do divorces and insurance scams and stuff like that. I don't do the heavy stuff. You want someone else.
And Louis Cypher wants Harry because he wants him to find a guy named Johnny Favorite, also known as Jonathan Lieberman, I think, or Liebman? Liebling. Which, by the way, I guess in German is a kind of definition for favorite. So it's
cool.
Yeah. So he wants him to find a guy named John Liebling, aka Johnny Favorite. Johnny Favorite. Now this is all around World War II, and that's very important. This is like 10 plus years after World War II. Johnny Favorite was a crooner. He was a Tony Bennett, God rest his soul. He was a Frank Sinatra, and he was very, very famous. Manster, what ended up happening, at least as far as we know, to Johnny Favorite, and why Louis Cypher can't find him?
So Johnny Favorite was in the war, in the World War II, and something happened. He suffered some kind of trauma, neurological trauma, or face injuries, and stuff like that. And so then he went into, I don't know, a psychiatric treatment place,
Yeah.
and he had shell shock and all this
Amnesia.
stuff.
Yeah.
Amnesia. And what we learn, right? Is this when we learn it? Is that he had made some sort of bargain with Louis Cypher.
Yeah.
Cypher.
He owes good old Cypher something. Right?
Something. Just some collateral thing that
Yeah.
he.
Now, do you think, let me ask you a question, a totally serious question. Do you think in 1987, I know I kind of figured out the twist involving Harry's character fairly early, but I wasn't sure how it worked out. Right. But do you think in 1987, the idea of Alan Parker and the writing was that you weren't supposed to know who Louis Cypher was and what he's looking for? Because, I mean, to me, it feels very obvious, but I'm also not thinking from a 35-year ago movie-going experience.
I can only tell you my experience as, what did we say, 87?
Yeah.
So I was like 20-something at that time. I am so into words and meanings of words and sounds of words and all that stuff. And I didn't fucking pick up on it.
So even when he's talking about how he owes him something like
and
a great debt.
Rewatching it, it's so obvious. It's the Faust story, Faustus. This is the guy sold his soul to the devil, and he's coming back.
Yep. Well, hey, that's fine. We're this is all spoilers, baby. This is all spoilers. And not to mention, we very, very much pointed out that Louis Cypher, the name is, duh, right? So he tells Johnny also when he shakes his hand, he says, I feel like I know you. And Johnny says, no, you don't know me. Were you ever in the war? I was in the war, but I was only there for a little while. I got fucked up is what he says. I came back and that basically I was out of it. So now we know that much. So Harry Angel goes about his way, and we're going to talk through this movie, but we can't talk about all the little avenues. Boy. You have to watch this movie to see all the different avenues that he goes through to figure out where Johnny Favorite is. And that's super important, that even though we're not talking about it, it's super important to the results of the movie as to why all these avenues. So he basically starts looking for Johnny Favorite. He goes to this mental hospital where the nurse has never seen this guy before. He determines some documents have been recently forged, and he goes to the doctor's house. And the doctor, who has been kind of keeping it quiet, is an older doctor, right? He's an older doctor, and he admits he's obviously Harold finds a bunch of as you keep your morphine in the fridge,
right? Well, did you find when Harry was very bold,
super bold,
for a guy who says, I don't want to do any heavy hitting. He just has no problem at all sneaking into people's houses and sitting at their kitchen table when they walk in the front door, all that stuff.
My assumption was that even though in his job as a private eye, what type of private eye he was, he probably never really got confrontational with people. But my assumption is he breaks into places all the time, that he does stuff that is underhanded. But he goes in and he basically tells his doctor, look, I need to know what happened. The doctor explains to him that many years ago, an older man and a younger girl came to him and paid him $25,000 to take John Favorite out of the mental hospital. But part of the deal is that you're going to keep up appearances that he's been here for 12 years. Now, that sounds hard to do, but when nobody's looking for somebody, then how hard could that be?
Kind of easy.
Yeah, it's easy to hide somebody that no one gives a shit about, and nobody gives a shit about John Liebling or John Favorite.
No. Hey, speaking of getting confrontational, do me a favor.
Yeah.
Get your face as close to your camera as you can right now. And I'm going to do the same. This is how fucking close he was with that guy, rubbing his face, like caressing his forehead, grabbing his cheek, like rubbing under his nose. What the fuck was all that?
Yeah, he was a little creepy. He was
very handsy.
Yeah.
Very, very handsy.
So he tells the doctor, I'm going to leave you here. I'm going to go get a cheeseburger. And I'm not kidding. That's what he says to him. and I'm going to lock you in your own bedroom with the skeleton key that I got from your drawer. I'm going to come back in a few hours. I'm going to give you your fix of heroin, and you're going to tell me where they took Johnny Favorite. Well, he comes back, and very grossly, this guy's fucking eyeballs blown out. He has shot himself in the face, or so we think. And Harry Angel now is immediately kind of put off because, as he explains to Louis Cypher in their next meeting, I don't want to do this anymore because I already have, like, they're going to be looking for me, right? He has to wipe down everything. And of course, Louis Cypher says to him, if you don't want to continue, you don't have to, but I'm going to up your rate from $150 a day to $5,000. Like, that's a super raise. That's
right.
that's like a mega raise. Like, you would have thought he'd say 150 a day. I'm going to give you 375 a day. No, he doesn't double it. He trillions it up to $5,000. And then Angel's like, all right. So Angel just keeps on keeping on. We get some interesting scenes where he goes to this one Baptist church in Harlem a few times.
Yeah.
And the guy that's,
that preacher was something.
The preacher's awesome. What does the preacher say to his congregation? I love this line.
He's out there, man. He is like all about giving me your money. He's saying, I am God. And if you love your God, he should be riding in a Rolls Royce, not a Cadillac.
Yeah, he says that I heard a lot of people out there complaining because they heard that, like, your money has put me in a Cadillac. And he's like, but if you love me and you love God, your money should put me in a Rolls Royce. Yeah, right. He has no shame. But what does Harry find in, like, a little confined space at one point of this church, Lloyd?
So that's when he goes up there, and that's where he meets Winesap, right?
Yeah. Well, after he meets Winesap, when he meets Winesap, he sees that somebody, one of the what do you call it? One of the churchgoers has killed themselves.
There's a figure which appears several times in the film, all dressed in black with a cloak, and you can't see the face. There's a hat, and they're scrubbing blood off the wall.
Yeah. I'm talking about a little bit later on when he finds that little voodoo closet. Remember, he goes into the church, he opens it up, and he finds all he basically finds Joe Boo from Major League. He finds all of the voodoo shit. And then a couple of
like all these avenues, it's hard to like pick things out and say what was what.
That's what I'm saying is this movie, there's a lot going on in this movie. So he finds the voodoo closet and he gets thrown out of the church by a couple of big guys in suits. As he's running away, he actually runs into the procession and knocks the preacher off of his, like, they're carrying him on like a throne. So he's starting to get, like, further and further into the mystery of what has happened to Johnny Favorite. And some of the different things he determines is that Johnny Favorite had at least a couple of female lovers, right, Lloyd?
Right.
Who did he have? He had Margaret Cruzmark.
We got Margaret Cruzmark, and then a secret lover, Evangeline Proudfoot. And it's funny to me because, he does some recording into a reel-to-reel recorder. Basically, he's recording as if Cypher was going to listen to it.
Right.
And so he starts telling the story about, his lover, and then he mentions a secret lover of Evangeline Proudfoot, and then decides, you don't need to know a man's secrets. And then he erases that portion.
Right. He takes the secret lover,
which is very telling because of who Evangeline Proudfoot really is.
Right. And also what's going on with Harry Angel. Margaret Cruzmark was at one point lived in Brooklyn, and she ran a tarot /
Was it Madame Zora?
Madame Zora. She ran some kind of shop, but she eventually left and she went down to New Orleans. Also, they find out that this Proudfoot character also is in New Orleans. And there's rumors going about that Johnny Favorite at some point went back down to New Orleans. Toot Sweet, who is a guitar player that Johnny Favorite played with at one point, went back down to New Orleans. So as Harry Angel is kind of figuring all this stuff out, all signs are pointing him to New Orleans. Now I got to ask you a question, Lloyd. We do get a couple of times that Harry Angel seems to be a little triggered by something.
He is totally triggered, if this is what you're going for, by chickens.
Yeah, he doesn't like chickens, and it seems like mirrors fuck him up too.
Oh, mirrors too, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's got the scars on his face.
But every time he looks in a mirror, he does it in a phone booth at one point. He sees his reflection, and he does it, I think, in a bar, and he just like zones out, and he starts to have this weird flashback to a ticker tape parade.
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, it's connected to the mirror.
It's connected to the mirror. It's like he's seeing his face, and he's seeing something that is triggering him. And yeah, go on about the chickens, because
Chickens. Oh man, I don't know how many scenes there were with some sort of chicken reference. I think even really early in the movie, where before it becomes a thing, you don't even realize it. He can't stand to be around chickens.
when De Niro is sinfully eating a hard-boiled egg,
he's eating an egg.
he says, "Would you like an egg?" Because he's got a plate of 3. And De Niro and Louis Cypher's a sharer, you know. He says, "Mr. Angel, would you like an egg?" And he says, I can't stand chickens. And
he gets his pearly fingernail right under that eggshell. Oh, man.
Yeah, it takes him about 12 minutes of conversation to crack that first egg and peel all the shell off of it.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I think this is a little telling bit, too, is when Louis Cypher heavily salts his egg. Did you notice what Johnny, or did you see, I keep doing that. Did you notice what Harry Angel does with the salt?
Did he like pinch it and like throw it over his shoulder?
Throws it over his shoulder, which is supposed to mean, and we all seen people do that, but it's supposed to be you're blinding the devil when you do that. As he's going through all this stuff in New York City, all signs start to point to New Orleans. I got to ask you a question, though, before we travel to New Orleans in this film. Have you ever seen these weird sunshade nose blockers that get attached to glasses before? Okay.
No, he got that in Coney Island.
The gentleman who's lounging in a beach chair on the beach, and his wife is like, she's in the water because it's helping her varicose veins, he says, because she's been getting heavy.
She's been getting heavy.
She's been getting heavy. It
helps her veins.
It helps her veins out, that fat whore. And the guy says to him, he goes, would you like a block for your nose? And the guy has something on his nose. So I thought, oh, he's offering him some lotion to put on his nose, like you see in movies and you've seen in real life. But instead, it's like he gives him
a literal shield.
He pulls this box of shields out. Oh, and attached. He has a box of them.
I found this whole box under the bridge over there.
Yeah. It's so fucking weird. And he puts it on his little sunglasses, and now he's got this plastic nose shield, which the best part about it is that it keeps popping up in the rest of the movie. He keeps on, he's wearing it through the rest of the movie. I really like, by the way, like you said before, you're talking about the production design. I really liked Mickey Rourke's clothes in this, because he really came across as kind of like a schlubby PI.
That's definitely one of my notes, like later on. Yep.
Cream colored suits, you know, kind of all sweaty and nasty looking. They kind of don't fit him correctly. I kind of like that. All right, Manster. So he ends up going to New Orleans to start to find all these people that have left New York for New Orleans and hoping to find Johnny Favorite. He creeps on Margaret Krusemark and goes and sees her, and he tells her, what does he tell her?
That was super creepy.
Yeah. What does he tell her, Manster?
He first tells her his birthday, because she wants to do a reading on him.
Right.
And, you know, he takes all the information of Johnny Favorite and, you know, as it's his own, same birthday and all this stuff. And then she realizes, hey, you know, what are you pulling here?
Right.
Because you're talking about Johnny Favorite here.
February 14th, 1918.
Yeah.
Valentine's Day. And she figures out this guy's not kosher. And he tells her, he's like, look, I've been hired and I'm looking for Johnny Favorite. And she tells him that Johnny Favorite's dead, which he's been hearing quite a bit of. Johnny Favorite's dead.
Or at least dead to me.
Yeah, she does say dead to me. So he leaves her place, and then he starts tailing the guitar player Toot Sweet.
Toot Sweet.
Toot Sweet. He goes and sees Toot Sweet at his at one of his gigs. By the way, I didn't write them down. I should have. But if you watch through the credits, when they credit Toot Sweet's band, because it's probably all local, like New Orleans jazz musicians, they have awesome names. Like one guy is Sugar Blue. That's not the character name. That's the real fucking guy's name.
That's the dude.
There was another one that was like something crazy. I should have wrote it down. Go to IMDb, look up cast, look up Toot Sweet's band, and you're going to get some great New Orleans like jazz names.
Yep, for sure.
So he's talking to Toot Sweet, and let's go back to if you remember this, Lloyd, let's go back to the Louis Cypher ring. Okay. We also, on Margaret Krusemark, on a necklace, saw what? We also saw...
It was another pentagram.
Right. And what did Toot Sweet have on his grill? He had a grill tooth.
He had a gold tooth cover with a pentagram in it.
Right.
like embedded, like whatever, a see-through fucking pentagram shaped hole. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Yeah. Like a, what do you want
Like
to call it?
a star.
Well, no, pentagram, but what do you, like an etching.
Etching.
On the tooth. So he goes and he kind of confronts Toots, and Toots doesn't really want much to do with him.
Can't a man even take a piss?
Yeah, he follows him to the bathroom, and then he's greatly alarmed because what is on the urinal, Manster? What's on the urinal?
Someone has put a chicken foot on the urinal.
Yeah.
For Toots Sweet. Yeah, it's basically a sign like, hey, you're talking too much and you're targeted now.
Right. When Harry Angel gets down to Louisiana before he meets Toot Sweet, so this is like a scene prior, he goes to find what was the woman's name? Evangeline
Proudfoot,
the secret lover, and he goes to her homestead, and she's dead, but he meets Lisa Bonet's character, Epiphany Proudfoot, who's 17 years old.
She's everything I need. Daddy says she's too young, but she's old enough for me.
Yeah, it has a baby of her own.
Has a baby of her own, and also takes the most erotic slop sink shower, just washing her hair I've ever seen before. And I'm not being gross. The camera liked her a lot in that scene.
It sure did.
It's just a scene of her washing her hair.
It's just she's leaning over washing her hair, and the water is just cascading down her face and like dripping off her nose and chin.
Yeah,
it's very erotic. I mean,
yeah. I hate using the word sexy when referring to stuff, but it's incredibly sexy. And the problem, they make it very clear that he is kind of like enamored by her. And they also make it clear from her body language and her like looking at him that she'll sit on his face right now.
Yeah, that's clear.
So he goes, he meets Toot Sweet. Toot Sweet leaves the bar and Harry follows him. Harry gets kicked out of the bar by a couple of guys that are like, you're looking into stuff too much. He follows Toot Sweet, follows him basically to like the woods of fucking backwoods Louisiana. And what does he run into there, Manster?
Shit. Well, doesn't he go into his house?
Well, no. What is he in the field? What's happening in the field?
Fuck if I remember.
Yeah.
He runs into this whole voodoo ritual with chickens, and Lisa Epiphany Proudfoot is in the middle of this thing with a very loose blouse where one breast keeps
her tits
exposing itself.
Out. Yeah. And
a chicken up in the air above herself. She's got a razor blade, like a switchblade. Yeah, there's all kinds of music, and Toot Sweet is in there. He's in the ring of trust, playing the drums or bongos or whatever the hell he's doing. And it's just a crazy scene. Like, this is a scene that I don't think you want to be caught watching.
Well, and that's also, I think, why Harry like leaves. Like he's watching this, and when he's watching this, after she cuts the fucking chicken's
she cuts
throat
the chicken's neck. The blood drips down her fucking mouth and face and breasts, and then another woman comes in and they're dry humping on the ground. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I was like, is this going to be some like chicken blood scissoring? What's happening here? So Harry is like, fuck this, I got to go. He goes back and follows Toot Sweet home. And basically, like you said before, I mean, he's getting deeper into it, but he gets aggressive again. He's like slapping Toot Sweet around. He's like, all right, what the fuck
and Toot
is
Sweet's
the deal?
Not a young guy.
No, Toot Sweet's like a fucking old dude. And Harry Angel's just beating him around. And he says, what's up with Epiphany? I saw you guys. What's up with Epiphany? And Toot Sweet tells him she's like a voodoo priestess, like since she was 13. Her mama was before her, and now she is. And that's just the way it is. He leaves, goes back to his hotel room. He gets accosted by the cops that look like standing next to each other, like a number 10, the skinny guy and the fat guy.
Yeah.
And they come and they're like, do you know a guy named Toot Sweet? And here's the thing. In the last scene, right before he leaves Toot Sweet, he writes his phone number and name down and hands it to him and says, if you see anything, call me, which is so fucking dumb. He
stuffs it in his mouth. Yeah.
Which is so dumb because at that point, who's going to call him, you know?
Yeah.
So these cops come and are like, you know a guy named Toot Sweet. And he's like, no, don't know Toot Sweet. And, well, what does it matter to you? Well, he's dead. Okay, so now there's two murders that, at least two murders. And what is the manner of Toot Sweet horrifying death, Manster?
Yeah, well, his rather large, apparently, genitalia was sliced off and stuffed down his throat.
Yeah, not good. No bueno. So the cops are like, we're watching you. So Harry Angel continues to do kind of like his investigating. He's also getting tailed by a couple of white dudes with some dogs that at one point attack him. These guys, we find out later, have been hired by Ethan Kruzmark, the father of Margaret Kruzmark.
Margaret. Hey, how would you like to fall into a wet, trough of crawdads?
Yeah, I don't think I would at all. I don't think I would at all.
With the dog biting your nuts off.
The dog is biting his leg. He's in a wheelbarrow of crawdads. By the way, that's a great fucking band name. Write that down. Wheelbarrow of crawdads. Yeah, that scene was pretty funny. So a few more things happen. Let's get to we already talked about the sex scene pretty heavily, but he comes back to his shitty hotel. She's waiting for him, and they go inside. And as we discussed earlier, they have the boning of a lifetime. But we didn't mention something that happens during that boning, Manster. What is peculiar happening?
They start boning, and at first water starts dripping, from the ceiling, a little crack in the ceiling, and then all of a sudden there's cascading down the lampshade, and that goes on for a little bit, and then all of a sudden there's blood mixed with all the water, and blood is cascading, and then the whole, the bed and her body is just completely like Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street, covered with blood. And then it all snapped, by the time they were done with the scene and she screams at the top of her lungs, it all snaps away, and they're just normal again.
She's riding him at one point, and her body is at a 90-degree angle backwards.
Yeah,
she's sitting on him, and she's bent back, but it looks great. She's all sweaty and everything, but it also looks like that can't feel good for her. She's bent back so fucking far. Good for her.
And I do have to say, there were scenes of her breasts in that, but really nothing else. Most of the nudity in that scene is Mickey Rourke and his thrusting butt cheeks.
If you have a Mickey Rourke butt thing, if you've got a Mickey Rourke ass thing, especially from 87, this movie is jerk off material.
This is for you.
This movie is pause it, knock it around for a little bit, rewind it a little bit, keep watching. That's what this is.
Right.
That's what this is. I wonder how many women returned this movie in 1987 to the video store on that scene. And the guys at the video store because it's almost the end of the movie when they bone.
This must be in that list of most pause, movie.
Weakest VHS moments because they're so strained from being paused is 1 hour and 46 minutes into Angel Heart when Mickey Rourke's ass is right there for everybody to look at. The cops come again the next morning, and Epiphany is in the bed, and he comes outside, and the cops are not so, what's the word, PC about how they feel about mixed relations. And they're basically telling him, look, Margaret Kruzmark has now been killed. There's 3 bodies of people that you have been investigating. You're our guy, so we're going to keep looking into you. So he has one more run-in with Kruzmark's men, which has a great scene where he sees that they're following him in town in this old pickup truck with one of their dogs in the back. And he sees that they're about to follow him. He approaches the truck. He walks across the street, approaches the truck, walks up to the driver of the truck, and fucking headbutts him. Right in the mouth. And then gets chased by the other guy. They end up in a stable. And two things happen in the scene that I thought were crazy. Number one, the bad guy is shooting at Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke's hiding behind a horse. The horse gets shot and dies and lands on Mickey Rourke, and he can't move. He finally gets out from under it. When the bad guy gets close enough to Mickey Rourke to get him, or the dog does, the dog chases him, the dog gets kicked by one of the fucking horses.
I know. I love that scene. I thought that was good.
How they've talked about, what do they call that? The, what's that scream? The Wilhelm scream that's in millions of movies. If you ever look that up.
I've never heard of that term.
It's a famous scream that they use in movies all the time. It's from years and years and years ago, probably the 30s or 40s, and they drop it in movies all the time as like a joke. I also think that whenever a dog gets hurt in a movie, it's the same fucking sound. Like that.
Yeah,
that's
totally that.
I think that there's also a Wilhelm dog scream that nobody just has dug into yet.
Oh, funny. At some point, I think we probably missed it, was when he goes back to see the Margaret Cruiseman, and he finds something very disheartening, or
Is that after he's told she's killed?
I think it's before the sex scene, actually.
You're right, because he finds her. She has been, well, you said it, right?
I already said it. Yeah, it's disheartening.
She has been dehearted by somebody, heart sitting on the floor. And also he goes into her appointment book and finds his name and the date that he was on, and rips it out and throws it out. So now we get to pretty much the end. And he goes to see this Ethan Krusemark guy because he knows that this guy seems to be in the know and his guys are chasing him. And he kind of feels like he understands that this guy might be at the center of it all. And this is where we kind of start getting our answers as to what's been happening in the movie. First of all, Krusemark offers him some delicious gumbo from a fucking gigantic pot of gumbo.
Yeah, huge pot.
He doesn't want any of the gumbo, but he takes a crab and throws it in just for flavor.
It's like a pot the size of the Salvation Army buckets at the end zone of football games.
You're right. And it actually, the pot was, well, and somebody dies in it. So I guess it proves it. But the pot was like so shallow. It looked so dangerous. Like if someone just knocked into it, 18 gallons of hot fucking gumbo are going to be splashing all over the floor.
Yeah.
So, Manster, maybe you could do a better job than me. What does Krusemark tell him about kind of all of the goings on here?
Oh, so let's see if I can figure this out. And if you feel free to cut in if I'm off track. But he explains that Johnny Favorite was actually a powerful occultist who sold his soul to Satan in exchange for stardom. And so Johnny got his stardom, but then wanted to renege on the bargain. And so in order to do so, they had to kidnap a soldier that looked like him.
Yeah. So Margaret Krusemark, the daughter of Ethan.
Yeah, I forgot to mention her.
She is also an occultist, and she's in love with Johnny Favorite. So she wants to save Johnny Favorite from the devil. So they determine that, and also Ethan Krusemark says, like, you don't understand how many powerful people down here in particular are in league with the devil. Like, this is not like super unusual. Like, I am, but he says I am, but he's like, my daughter is the real occultist. Like,
right.
I just benefit. I just get like the good stuff from Satan, but my daughter's
like the Hanukkah song.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is, but he isn't.
Right. Yeah. He even says, like, my daughter read tarot cards before she read anything else. Like, she's always been into this weird shit. So they incur a ritual where they have to find somebody that is essentially Johnny Favorite's close in age, same body type, and all that stuff. Now, the best I could tell from what the movie tells us is Johnny Favorite. I said Johnny Angel, I think. I'm so fucking confused. Johnny Favorite and Margaret Krusemark kidnap a GI from a ticker tape parade.
Yes.
Who looks like Johnny Favorite.
Yep.
They take him back to a room. They sacrifice him terrifyingly.
They cut out his heart and eat it.
They cut out his heart and eat it. He eats it. Johnny Favorite eats it while it's still beating. And the idea behind this is that since Johnny Favorite owes Satan his soul, he's stealing this other person's soul so that it will kind of, I think, like be like almost a protection, like his soul disappears because he's wearing another soul. Is that what you felt? Because they don't really explain it super well.
Maybe they were trading souls. Maybe it was a cover up of a soul, something like that. I think more he was just trying to just escape notice of Cypher. However, the machinations work.
I watched this movie yesterday, and I was thinking about it at work today. I'm like, so does one soul sit on top of the other? So anyways.
Technically, the soul does not belong to the heart.
First of all, you can only have one soul in a body. Actually. So at this point, Krusemark is somehow getting, I can't remember what he says, but he's getting into Harry Angel's head. Yeah. Like, because Harry Angel has been having these flashes of this ticker tape parade. Okay.
Yeah, constantly throughout the movie, like these little flashes.
He keeps on seeing like someone touching someone's shoulder, a soldier's shoulder. And as he turns around, we never see the face. He blacks out, wakes up, and Cruise Mark is fucking face first in the 18-gallon vat of gumbo. Before Cruise Mark dies, though, he tells Angel that Margaret kept the dog tags of the guy they killed in a vase in her apartment. So he goes back to the apartment one more time.
Which he actually looked at earlier.
He did. I totally
over. Yeah.
I totally noticed that. So when he goes back the next time, he finds the vase, he cracks it open, and the dog tags say what, Manster?
The dog tags say Johnny Favorite.
No.
Oh, sorry.
You're doing the same thing I'm doing. You're getting all fucked up.
I get all mixed up. All right. The dog tags say Harry Angel.
Yes. So he's like, what the fuck? So he goes back one last time and talks to Cypher, and we get the plot breakdown where Cypher and this is where Cypher comes out with the heavy metal hair, sitting down, and he's like, so you figured it out, Johnny. And he's like, don't call me Johnny. And I love this scene because Mickey Rourke keeps on repeating, I know who I am.
I know who I am. I know who I am.
And he's starting to cry because he is also realizing what has happened here. And
he did that in the Cruise Mark scene, right?
He did it. He started it in Cruise Mark, but he really gets into it with Lucifer because essentially, he says he figures it out. Great detective.
He has an epiphany.
Yeah, he has an epiphany where he determines that Louis Cypher is Lucifer. And he says to him, he goes, even your name is a dime store joke, which I liked. And at one point, to kind of prove his mettle, Mettle and Metal, Louis Cypher, fucking his eyes go Michael Jackson Thriller, like all orange and green. So he is Satan.
Yeah, he's got the rings around it.
And he tells him straight out, the second you cut that innocent boy in half, like I was coming for you forever. I was never going to fucking leave you alone. So this whole plot of Harry Angel tracking down Johnny Favorite is a fucking Satan game.
The whole thing is a MacGuffin.
It's a MacGuffin, the whole thing. Satan is just being Satan and fucking with one dude to just really dig his claws into him for what he considers, a wrong on his part. I sold you your soul. You owed me a soul. And for the machinations of what happened to Johnny Favorite and how this has all happened is after he stole Harry Angel's soul, this is when Johnny Favorite got drafted, went over to the European theater in World War II. He ends up with amnesia, so he loses his identity being Johnny Favorite. His face gets messed up. He gets sent back to America. And because Margaret Cruise Mark loves him so much, her dad pays for them to take him, but they don't want to keep him. They just let him go. They let him out into like the New York streets. And eventually, they don't talk about this at all, but eventually that's where the kind of private investigator Harry Angel persona must manifest itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because he is Johnny Favorite. Now,
yeah, he is. Yeah.
Now, Satan does all this shit to him, and he knows it's true. And he basically says, you're going to hell. He goes back one last time to go back to see Epiphany. Something we didn't mention earlier is that Epiphany told, this is so fucking gross. Epiphany told Harry Angel that Johnny Favorite was what?
Johnny Favorite is her father.
She fucked her father.
So yeah, she fucked her father.
Yeah. Like not just like, oh, me and my dad like accidentally kind of sweetly made love. Like she WWE MMA fucked her dad.
Totally.
Yeah. But the problem is when he gets there, the two cops are there and she's fucking dead. So he comes in and he tells the cop at this point, he says, that's my daughter. And he goes, and you killed her? And I think he says yes. And he says, so you're the one that shoved the gun up her snatch? So
that's right. That's right.
Oof. So then in what may be one of the only scenes I didn't really care for too much, the cop brings the baby out from the bathroom. And earlier in the movie, Epiphany had kind of alluded to the fact, very Anakin Skywalker-ish, that her son was like an immaculate conception.
Immaculate conception. Right?
Kind of,
obviously now.
Yeah, the baby's eyes turn all De Niro, orange and green and everything. So I didn't really love the visual of that. It looked kind of goofy, but we now know that most likely this kid was fucking Satan's.
The baby, he's the son of the devil too.
Son of the devil too. So the movie ends there. It's essentially the last scene of the movie is Harry Angel, or whoever this is, Johnny Favorite, just going in an elevator down and down and down.
I love the way they incorporated that into the credits. Like
I did
all
too.
the credits roll over this endless elevator going down, 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 all the shadows, which is also another, theme throughout the movie itself, in the beginning. And you see these little scenes.
Yeah.
Kind of intercut all throughout.
I agree. I agree. It was
Very
it was
cool.
quite good. And I think, I didn't hear it because maybe I shut it off. I got to the very end, but somebody, or I read somewhere today that if you wait till after the last credit, you could hear Louis Cypher say.
Yeah. So he whispers twice. The first time he whispers Harry and then Johnny. And this is the exact same thing that I mentioned in the beginning scene, in that really like dark noir kind of scene. You hear Louis Cypher also whispering Harry and Johnny in the opening scene.
Okay, I must have missed that, and I got all the way through the credits, and I must have just shut it off right before that happened, where he says it. So, but I read that happened. So, all right, so that's Angel Heart.
That is your movie.
Let's talk about the box office.
This country, you gotta make the money first.
All right, so weekend ending March 6th through the 8th of 1987. Here's what you got. Number 5. I think this is Shelley Long. Outrageous Fortune. It had been out for 6 weeks. It made $3.3 million. Number 4, a little movie you may have never heard of before called Angel Heart. Opened $3.7 million. Number 3, another movie I want to do on the show at some point. Tough talk, but still a great movie. It had been out for 12 weeks. It was out for a while. $6.1 million. Platoon.
Wow. Tom Berenger?
Yeah.
That's
Charlie
a rough
Sheen.
movie.
It is. Number 2, the film Larry will be showing on August 19th at the Next Cult Classic showing. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. It had been out for 2 weeks, $6.7 million. And number 1, it opened the same week as Angel Heart, $6.9 million. We covered this, me and Shawnee Mack and Professor Joe covered this over on the Patreon about a year ago. Lethal Weapon. So that's some good stuff. This film was $17 million for budget, and it looks like from what I'm reading, it made 17.2. So I know you got to figure for
it didn't make any
advertising.
money.
It essentially made nothing or broke us even as close as possible. All right. Now that we've talked about the box office, we've talked about the movie, let's get down to the nitty gritty and talk about what we and some of our Pint insiders thought of Angel Heart. Let's rate this thing.
Don't judge me, monkey.
All right, we're going to start off with our Pint insiders before we get into our thoughts on this. You all know the rules, 0 to 5, 0 being the worst thing ever, 5 being the best thing ever. Quarter and half scale are usable. Let's start off. Scary Larry Dwyer, our buddy. Check out Scary Larry's House of Horrors, all those episodes. Also, go to ConnecticutCultClassics.com and see what cool shows are coming up and stop by and say hi to us when we're there too. So Larry says he always enjoyed Angel Heart, but apparently not as much as Joe and Eric. I should have read theirs first.
Oh, boy.
But that's okay. It's a solid 3 for me. Might consider giving it an extra half point for being the last time Rourke's face looked normal. All right. So, and I also put down that we're recording on Notkin's request tomorrow on the top of this patron post. And Larry says, by the way, Notkin's request sounds like a D&D adventure. So that it sounds like a great one. So
Yeah.
Joe Doherty, the professor, he says, I give this a 4.25. Love this movie. I even read the book it's based on. I think Joe's lying about reading the book. I think he's saying that to be the cool guys that we're not, but that's cool. And here he is, the real man of the hour, Eric Notkin. Thank you, Eric, for suggesting this. Probably agree with Joe. So I'm assuming he means a 4.25. Really cool, unique, and creepy movie that has a great atmosphere. The more I've seen it, the higher the score climbs. All right. Well, Eric, thank you for being a Patreon, a Pint Insider. Real quick before Lloyd and I give our ratings, I have a quick funny story about the Patreon. So last week, I went on Patreon to post something, and I got this notification from Patreon, and it said, read this, and I had to read it. And it said, because you are an 18 plus account, you have to send us a picture of your ID and send us a selfie of yourself to verify you're the person that you're saying you are.
Wow.
And it had this whole thing about all the rules for 18 plus. Now, when I started the Patreon and it gave me all the options, I hit 18 plus simply because of our language. I thought that I had to. In the ensuing time, I have had multiple people tell me that when they were searching for us on Patreon, they could not find the pint. And I myself even tried and couldn't find it. And I never got around to messaging Patreon. So I get this message from Patreon and I start digging into it. Essentially, Patreon thought we were a porno site because I hit 18 plus. 18 plus accounts, which do have nudity and sexuality involved, because that's what it said. It said, because you're an account that offers nude and sexual. I'm like, we don't offer nude and sexual. We just say shit like twat once in a while. So I messaged Patreon and said, I want to readjust my account to like all ages because we're not sexually like explicit. And the lady got right back to me and said, I looked at your account. You're all ages now. As soon as I did that, if you type in the pint now on Patreon, it comes right up.
Oh,
because
wow.
It said that if you have an 18 plus sexually explicit account, you can't look it up just simply by going to Patreon and looking it up. You have to have a link or get to it. So hopefully for all the folks that had, because I had a few people tell me, I can't find your Patreon. The reason is because they thought that we were a site that offered pictures of the Manster's giant dick. And that might happen.
That. Well,
that might happen someday. But right now we're not. So it's just kind of funny. So if anybody else out there listening, if you've come across that, and if you were dumb like me and picked 18 plus thinking that it was a language thing, that's only if you're showing pictures of like, of dirty shit. So I was very relieved, to not have to worry about that. Cause I'm like, why am I sending a picture of myself and my ID to this thing? Like to prove who I am. But it kept on saying in all the wordage, sexually explicit. And I'm like, are we considered sexually explicit just because we might say shit once in a while? No, because I hit 18 plus, it thought we were showing like boobies and titties and vaginas and stuff.
Well, they should have had some little more explanation about that.
Yeah.
Click a little information button.
Yeah. So if you want to check us out now, you can go to Patreon and just type in the pint and we will pop right up, or go to Patreon/ the pint and you could become an insider. But I thought that was a funny story because it was just so fucking out of left field. All right. Back to Angel Heart. Manster, what do you give it?
Well, geez, I've got a lot of notes in my rating. So you know what? I won't make you wait for all that. I'm going to tell you straight up. I've always liked Angel Heart. Of course, I remember, what it's famous for, but rewatching it again, I just really enjoy this movie. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think what happens is this could be just another, it's kind of like a neo-noir movie to me. It's, it's dark. It's got a femme fatale in it, but she's the fatal one. I think it sets apart because it has this sort of knowing sense of humor about it. It's got good acting, good directing. I like the sudden descent into like the supernatural thriller kind of stuff that starts happening. The logic, as you're going through the movie, it's very like unsettling, and it seems like the logic makes sense, but you're like thinking, we already alluded to it. It's all over the place, and you're trying to like make sense of it. And it does make a weird sense once you figure it out and once you get to the end. And it's one of those movies where if you're in the theater or, you watch it and then you start thinking about it, you're like, you rerun it in your head, like you said you were doing at work, and you start like reinterpreting scenes that you saw, and you're like, oh, wow, that's how that fits. And, so it's really cool. De Niro, I think, must have had a great time with this character.
Yeah.
It just looks like he's so perfect for that. I can't even imagine maybe Jack Nicholson, but De Niro's perfect for that. And he sets the tone, and he's got the slick look, the sharp pointed fingernails, the black suits, and the slick hair. I mean, everything about him is slick. But it's hiding like this depravity that's just below the surface. And it's just very cool. And like we said earlier, Rourke does a really good job of being this kind of like unshaven, desperate, schlubby guy, and not just like as at the end, but like he's kind of like there, but it progresses, but it's there in the beginning, and you can see it.
Yeah,
and it means something. It all means something.
He's also like, what I liked about him is he's also not like this hard boiled kind of like tough guy detective. He's pretty affable, you know, like just a little like the line, like you said before, like it's Wednesday. You know what Wednesday is? Kind of comes like when he has his final crushing moment of his realization that he's not who he thinks he is. Like you feel for him because he is a person, you know, and he's essentially discovering his own murder and his own, like the destruction of his identity and of his soul.
He's a guy who fucking got his heart ripped out and eaten by someone.
Right. But he's
really,
also the guy that ate, you know what I mean?
And he's also the guy, it's at the same time, you know, it's these pieces are really.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's a 4.
So yeah, 4.
I give it a 4.
Yep.
I had never seen it before. I really enjoyed it. I don't think that there's any, like, so here's the thing. Right off the bat, even if I already knew that De Niro played the devil. I would have known it. It's obvious. They're not trying to hide that. I also very early picked up on the fact that Johnny Favorite is either the Rourke character or somehow really closely, built in with him somehow. Maybe it's someone he knows or something. So there wasn't a surprise to me at the end of the twist in terms of like he is Johnny Favorite, but the road getting there and finding out how he was Johnny Favorite and how he was also Harry Angel and how all these people worked into it, I thought was really great. I also really like the fact that, like we said before, here's a movie that the entirety of the plot is a fucking joke played on the main character, because none of his investigation matters. He's only investigating something that Cypher
self-revelation. That's the only reason for it.
That's
self-revelation.
It's torture.
Yeah.
The devil wants to torture him a little bit. So he puts him on and how much worse can it be? You discover that you're not a real person or that your soul was stolen. You fucked your own daughter, right? Like that's a big, like that's something, I'll be honest. That is something.
And you put a gun up her snatch.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. But that's like a revelation that has never been spoiled to me about this movie. And I won't name the movie in case anybody out there has never seen it and wants to see it, but there's a very famous Asian movie from the last 20 years where one of the twists is the main character finds out that he's been banging his daughter the whole time. And that's pretty famous for that movie. I had never heard that aspect of Angel Heart. I was actually like, oh shit. When she said Johnny Favorite is my father, and at that point in the movie, I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's Johnny Favorite. And I know that there's like a no holds barred sex scene coming up. I was getting a little fucking anticipatory of that. And it turns out, that it was. Yeah, I give this a 4 all day long. Eric, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric, for bringing this back to me.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it to me for the first time because I had a good time with it. All right, that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with something else. I don't know what it's going to be. Manster, why don't you tell everybody out there where they can find us, and then tell everybody out there that we don't want to talk anymore.
You can find us on any of your podcatchers that you prefer, on Facebook and YouTube. It's the Pint: a pop culture podcast, and on Instagram and something new called Threads.
Yeah, I barely use it, but it's there.
Yeah, I've checked it out. At the Pint Podcast, and now you can finally find us on Patreon, www.patreon.com/the Pint.
Yeah, and if you guys want us to be a porno site, let us know, because I'll just go back to being a porno site and we'll just start.
Yeah, we'll just work it in somehow.
Remember on the Titanic episode, I told you that the Master has a kaiju-sized dick, and I'm not afraid to get the pixel rate of my phone up to get them pictures.
Yeah, I'll show you later. All right. Hey, see ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over!
Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!